Hello my dear friends, and welcome back to yet another Skeleton Crew video. It is I coming at you once again, your favourite galactic hostess, Star Wars Meg. And as we get closer to episode 7 tomorrow night, it's about to get real, and I'm so excited to learn how things are going to wrap up with 2 episodes to go. It's been so great seeing this show bring together fans of all generations. I've seen a ton of comments from OG Original Trilogy fans, the prequel generation, of which I'm a part of, and even fans who got into Star Wars in more recent years after the sequel trilogy. Of course there are going to be detractors, but it's great to see Star Wars in the run-up to Andor Season 2 have another massive win. So today's going to be a bit of a different sort of video because, as you know, I've been very positive about Skeleton Crew. I've had very few criticisms. But today, just having done a rewatch of the first 6 episodes, believe it or not, I did find a problem. And it's not because I was looking for something to moan about. This is something that simply came to mind when I went back to rewatch the most recent episodes. But don't panic, I still adore this series. And as you're gonna see, this so-called problem is one of the best things Skeleton Crew has going for it. So, allow me to give you some context. When the show was first marketed, Lucasfilm came out and said, here is yet another Mandalorian spin-off, and this one is starring Jude Law. But the other massive reveal they gave us is there was going to be a returning character from the Mandalorian Season 3, the Nikto pirate Vane, an important member of the now deceased Gorian Shard's crew when they tried to attack Navarro. And I don't know if you remember this was quite a while ago, but myself and some other YouTubers tried to work out how Skeleton Crew could connect to the wider Mandoverse, based on very little information, but also based on this one minor character from Mando, who we assumed was going to play a bigger role in this show. But 6 episodes in, and I've got to say, he hasn't done very much. He's now working for Brutus, and granted he's had a couple of significant lines, he identified the Old Republic credits in episode 2 on Borgo. Not to mention, in the most recent episode, episode 6, he was present when Jod was about to be sentenced to death by airlock. He saw Jod wriggle his way out of it, and is no doubt going to be present when they go to Atatin, or try to, whatever's in store in the next episode. But needless to say, with Vane being marketed as the connective tissue between the Mandalorian and Skeleton Crew, I'm actually so glad he's been nothing more than a recurring familiar face. A major criticism of Mandalorian spin-offs is the way they force in cameos and force connections to other Star Wars stories and the wider Star Wars mythos. Skeleton Crew daring to go its own way has been the best thing for this show. And I'm gonna say something which might sound premature, you're gonna say Meg, it's far too early to make such a grandiose assessment. At least wait for the final 2 episodes to drop. But I'm gonna say it, I think Skeleton Crew is right up there with Andor and The Mandalorian's first 2 seasons. It's a very different kind of show. I'm not comparing the genres, the differing tones, the different target audience, but if we're just talking about quality of storytelling, quality of writing, Skeleton Crew has been an absolute delight. And a major part of that charm, at least in my book, is that it's really able to stand on its own 2 feet. It's not contingent on other Star Wars stories. Now I have had theories of ways the ending could connect to Ahsoka, could connect to Mando, but so far it's just been so great that none of that's been forced. You can watch Skeleton Crew having never watched another Star Wars project, and all of the magic, all of the themes resonate. As a diehard fan of George Lucas Star Wars, I can see Skeleton Crew being a very different kind of entry point into the franchise. So far, I actually consider it a blessing Vane hasn't had a bigger role, that Jon Watts and Chris Ford haven't shoehorned in references to Navarro, Gorian Shard, the events of The Mandalorian's 3rd season, because during times in other Star Wars shows where this has happened, it can come across as inauthentic. But Skeleton Crew feels so organic, it's such a refreshing new addition to the Star Wars canon. Now as for the role of Vane, he might still play an important role in the final 2 episodes, they could still tie this into Mando, but I've got a theory why Vane was pushed so hard in the initial marketing for Skeleton Crew, but didn't end up playing a significant part. It's all to do with Lucasfilm's fear of how Skeleton Crew was going to be received. This was a brand new series with an entirely new cast. They didn't know if it was going to resonate with fans, and we know in recent years their track record shows they never really have their pulse on how the fandom feels about Star Wars. And because Mando was still one of the most popular things Disney Star Wars had put out, they wanted to be like, hey, remember this guy? Remember this character from this thing you know? Well, guess what? He's gonna be in this other show. Why not check it out? But like I said, Skeleton Crew is strong enough to stand on its own 2 feet. It doesn't need member berries. And while the Easter eggs are fun, they're not really in your face. They just serve to remind you this is Star Wars and not some other sci-fi project. It's part of a shared universe, but it doesn't require you to have seen Mando. So yes, Vane is a familiar character, but in a way, I'm glad he's not taking center stage. And I just want to point out, I'm not the only one who's made this observation, but the difference is, I'm not thinking of it as a negative. One opinion piece says this: in Skeleton Crew, Vane is featured in 3 episodes so far. However, none of his appearances have had any impact. We know he worked for Captain Silvo, and later on, he joined Brutus and mutinied against his captain. His appearances have been disappointing, and he's mostly stood around and said a few lines here and there. Even though The Mandalorian's 3rd season had its issues, the episode that focused on Gorian Shard was a fun one. Chapter 21, The Pirate. And Vane seemed like a very intimidating character in it. The writing of Skeleton Crew has failed to justify his presence in the show. Apart from being a pirate in the same era, there's nothing for him to do. There are still 2 episodes left to turn things round, and this is where my opinion differs. I'm absolutely fine them not connecting Skeleton Crew to Mando or Ahsoka or anything we know. It's satisfying enough just to see a familiar face, that's it. It wasn't like he had a major backstory to begin with. He's just working for different pirates. First it was Gorian Shard, then Captain Silvo, and now Brutus. Does Vane really require more fleshing out? Is he really that important of a character? I don't think so. And with so many mysteries still to be answered with 2 episodes to go, Brutus is going to be more important, episode 7 is going to be focused on Jod, the children, are they going to return home to Atatin before the pirates? And like I said in my last video, even Kim may re-emerge, and she was far more fascinating. But, my dear friends, if you're in the camp that they should connect the 2 shows, here's a theory for you. What if the end of Skeleton Crew connects to the Mandalorian and Grogu? What if Din Djarin and Carson Teva get news of Vane's partnership with Brutus? What if that creates problems? As we get further into the Mandoverse, Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni want to involve more aspects from Legends. Expanded universe stories post-episode 6 are a major influence of Disney canon's exploration of the same time period. And as we see in non-canon material, also teased in the opening crawl of this show, pirates posed quite a few problems for the New Republic. So even if it's not in Skeleton Crew, pirates might be here to stay. Vane might appear in other projects, Mando and Grogu, The Mandalorian's 4th season, which is now rumoured to be back, so who knows? And there were times in Legends pirates came to the rescue. So my dear friends, let's find out what's in store in the next episode. I can't wait to break it down. We're gonna go deep on this one. I know it's gonna be a big episode. It's centered around Jod. Go and check out my previous videos in preparation. This week we have discussed so much. And I just want to say a huge thank you for being part of this amazing Star Wars community. If you enjoyed this video, my dear friends, please be sure to give me a big fat thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, check me out on socials, and may the Force be with you, always.